years entertaining you every Sunday night, but he's fallen ill now, fighting for his life from a hospital bed. He's suffering from pneumonia, heart attack, kidney failure, sepsis, a UTI, and is currently actually in the process of relearning how to walk. We here at Rainier Avenue Radio love our guy Ness and sincerely ask you to help him out by donating to his GoFundMe to help him get back to good health. Donate today by going to GoFundMe. Support Nasty Ness Rodriguez Road to Recovery. Again, that's GoFundMe. Support Nasty Ness Rodriguez Road to Recovery. Thank you for helping out our guy, DJ Nasty Ness.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
Ladies and gentlemen, Juan Cotto touching bases with you live from Leshigh. There he is, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities. So I hope that no one out there is yelling and screaming at people on the roadways. That's never a good thing. Second of all, we use the word iconic sometimes, and legendary. It has become such a part of the lexicon in our country, but the word legend and iconic could not be suited for a better person than the Nasty Ness Rodriguez. And Daniel, I know you're way too young to remember, but Nasty Ness Rodriguez on C89 down in Southeast Seattle, the radio station out of Nathan Hale. And when the wind blew south down Lake Washington, we could actually get C89 at night. And he played the best music in the city. There's no question about it. And I was all of 14, 15 years old, and he was on K-Fox, and Nasty Ness Rodriguez, certainly one of the legendary giants in the community broadcast industry here in the Seattle area, and has had just a wide checkered career and so many different legendary people, Kenny G and all of these incredible music talents have performed in front of Nasty Ness Rodriguez. And I'm hoping, I saw that on I saw Nasty Ness Rodriguez. There he is right there. I saw his GoFundMe account. And sorry, Mick, I need to spitball this real quick. Yeah. But Nasty Ness Rodriguez certainly needs our support right now. And there's a number of us who now are approaching our 60s, for crying out loud. And he was such a monumental figure growing up here in Seattle when all you had was that transistor radio. And I certainly will be making another donation to that account here very soon. So I hope that people get an opportunity, for those of you that do not know Nasty Ness Rodriguez, learn more about his history. But it is always hard to see friends of yours and people that you admire in this type of situation, and he can certainly use our support right now. And then another on a much better note, and I hope since you texted me this morning, this man has just become a grandfather again. This young man to my right on the screen, Mick Hoffman, a grandfather again. Congratulations to and how was the couple doing?
They're doing okay. We haven't had a chance to see him yet. The baby's been in NICU. They had twins, so some complications. So that's why I'm staying close to home. I think we actually might get over to be able to see him tonight. Have my granddaughter, the oldest one, who's 2.5, bouncing around in the office here with me at the house. So could be a little interesting today. Oh, yeah,
I'm sure a man who knows how to juggle. Congratulations to you and your family, and we are praying that it all goes well down there.
Yeah, thanks. They're doing better today, so that's a good thing. They got off their respirators and aspirators and CPAP and everything else they had them hooked up to, and starting to feed. So
there we go. Good. We'll see how the show goes, Daniel. We'll see how Mick is in this. Today we are going to talk about on WIAA Primetime on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We're going to talk about the WIAA State Football Playoffs. We're going to talk about fall sports and the tournaments that are going on for the fall sports. It's not just football in the state of Washington, but we are a football state. But I know volleyball. Is slow pitch softball, are they also having their championships right now, or is that in the spring?
We had that a couple weeks ago, so we're done.
Okay, there we go. We'll come back to that. But I know cross country is also having its. I see a lot of kids out running and participating in sports. It's just good to see kids participating in sports. So let's briefly start off, Mick. And for those that don't know, Mick is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. They are out of Renton, Washington, and they oversee high school athletics in the state of Washington. And Mick has been in this position now for, I want to say this is your 6th year, but
yep, year 6.
This is year number 6. Boy, did you ever? What were you thinking 6 years ago?
I wasn't thinking we're going to be going through a pandemic and everything else that we've done. Honestly, the job was enticing and still is because of the ability to impact across the state. And with the challenges we've had, I'm really actually quite proud of our staff and our board, how we've navigated some of these trying times and everything going on in society, going on with public health and everything else, to be able to keep this moving forward and giving students opportunities. We've had 2 state events already. You mentioned the one slow pitch and cross country. So we've had thousands of students have their culminating events with great success. So it's been a lot of fun.
Tell us about the slow pitch softball. I know that was used. That came after the pandemic, correct? It was utilized as a way to get more kids involved in the stick and ball sports, and it certainly has been very popular over its start.
Yeah, it was a sport we had previously, and I honestly, I don't even. Sydney could probably give us the exact date of when we quit offering it and fast pitch came in and took over. So it was something that was brought back. The Spokane area was doing it, and Vancouver area started to do it. The central part of the state, now even Northwest, is starting to play. So, we've had a few state tournaments. It's a great entry-level sport. It's been fun to watch where some programs use it as a way to get some girls involved that maybe don't play sports. Some are using it to develop some of their fast pitch players in different positions or defensively, and some are just having a really good time with it. So,
do you remember who the state champions were, or do you remember who
I'm trying to remember. We had for Chihuahua, I believe, had a 3-peat this year, and I need to think who the 3A or the 2A, 3A champion was. We had some repeats. So good news is it's on our website, so I can cheat since I'm sitting at my desk.
And feel free to do that. It's interesting, and I don't digress because I think this is an important one. It's important that kids are playing a sport. I think no matter what it is, if you are a competitive football player or if you're competitive in one of the big 3 sports that seem to dominate our minds and the pantheon of American sports, it's like football, basketball, especially both men's and women's. Soccer seems to be another sport that's so popular in our community. And then track and field and so forth, and from a traditional standpoint. But it's good to have students playing a sport like slow pitch softball. And it's a sport that is easily adaptable, and it gives an opportunity for a lot of athletes who may not be involved and to be involved in a sport and to have fun and to be out there and celebrate with their classmates. And that was the cool thing about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mount Spokane was our 2A, 3A. We don't have enough teams playing yet at the 2A and 3A level for their own tournament, so we combine them. So the east side of the state definitely dominates in slow pitch still. They've been playing it the longest. So we had Mount Spokane University in the finals. But I'll tell you what is exciting with this. I'll give you a couple of quick stories. One, the first year we held the tournament again coming just prior to COVID, Chief Self made it. And I don't know if you know Ernie, their AD, but he's a great guy. I mean, you talk about somebody who loves his job and working with kids. And he's in full uniform, unied up, helping out because he was so excited to have a team from Chief Self qualify for the state playoffs. I mean, there was real energy. Their girls were so excited to be there and played hard. And they've been back a few years. So they're one of the programs that have found some success in qualifying and making it to the Yakima. The other one was another West Side team. North Creek made it. So, again, a very different community. And they had a young lady, and she was running to first base, and she actually kind of stumbled and fell. And I was sitting with AD Melton, so another guy who's really into his job, and he shared with me that it was the first sport this young lady had ever played, and that she hadn't wore cleats all year. And when they made it to state, they're like, you know what, we need to get some cleats on you. And so she was wearing cleats for the first time at the state event. And, people are saying, well, is that really a state event when you have athletes who are first time doing it? And I would say, you can tell I'm at home. We got too much going on, baby.
A big fan of Rainier Avenue Radio back there.
There you go. And so it's interesting though, if we quizzed our listeners and we started asking who won the state championships in a variety of sports, my guess is we would be under 10% depending on the sport, and if it wasn't a school right there in Seattle that won it. I do this all the time when I go and speak on sportsmanship, and I was just in Central Washington last week, and I asked them who won the girls 3A basketball championship last year. Now, for most of us, especially those in Seattle, that's an easy answer. 4P Garfield. One person. There's about 120 kids in the audience. One person, and it was a 2A league. So with schools that would compete, in that general one, and only one student out of 120 and one AD out of all the coaches and ADs were there could answer that question for a 4P championship. So it's not that we don't think winning's important, but what they experience and remember. I remember a lot. When you asked me who won the state championship, I was just there. We handed out trophies and trying to remember who it was. But I remember this young lady who got to compete for the very first time and the smile on her face when she got to first base with her first hit of the state tournament. Like, those are things you don't forget. And so trophies, you probably have thrown away more than a lot of people win. That's the way it goes. But what we remember is what we feel.
And that is the exciting part about participation in sports. Another sport, and I don't know if it is on the docket or people have been talking about it, but it seems like there's been an explosion of this sport in our community. It seems like everywhere I go, in fact, last night in the driving rain, I saw 4 people out on a court near our apartment here in Alesha, and they were playing pickleball. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, I know pickleball TV is popular and people are watching pickleball matches, and athletes are starting to drum up as these premier pickleball players. And I understand tennis to me is maybe one of the, like golf, a sport that looks easy on TV, but maybe is very difficult to play. Pickleball is easy, and I don't think I'd sit there and watch people playing it. I enjoy playing it. I enjoy pickleball. But the athletic quality and the ability of the athletes is so different. And I'm just wondering, do you ever think we're going to have pickleball in a state tournament? Because it sure is a popular game right now.
I'm sorry. I got Macy in here singing, and it's crazy. She's dying to get on camera. I can see her in my background just a minute ago. Pickleball started in state of Washington. I mean, it's a Washington-born sport. Mm-hmm. So we've actually been waiting to see if anybody would propose that as an amendment to sanction it, or if we'll get enough schools playing. So our understanding is right now there's not a lot of schools playing any type of competition pickleball. I think the biggest challenge they have is just court space. So it can be played indoors, as we know, but in the fall, volleyball's got those courts tied up pretty much. Basketball and wrestling in the winter, along with dance and drill throughout that, and then the spring would be a possible time where they could play. But you also have tennis, so I would imagine that at some point, as popular as it's become for the general community, that we'll get an amendment. Whether our schools choose to vote for it, it will be to be determined. But we have some pretty good pickleball players in our office. They go run down to the park for lunch every once in a while. So
I have there have been a lot of challenges out of the offices at Bloodworks Northwest, and we'll see. I do not have, Mick, I do not have one of those expensive $100 paddles. Seems like everyone's got this titanium paddle, and they're walking around in pickleball shoes now. But I am certainly willing to test someone's pickleball skills here, and I need to get myself in a little bit better shape and lose a few pounds before I get back out there. I also wanted to say before we go, this is Mick Hoffman the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. I'm Juan Cotto, Rainier Avenue Radio host on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And this is our show every Tuesday, or occasionally some days we are live every Tuesday here at 3 o'clock on the station. And we sit down and we discuss high school athletics. Before we go forward, I had it in my notes, and I wanted to, and I certainly will come back to this at the end of the show, but a young woman passed away, and I just got word of it, who was a star in our community. You mentioned Chief South, and somebody who was a big part of the Chief South community, and ultimately was a star at the University of Washington, Regina Rogers. She passed away suddenly this weekend. So my thoughts and prayers are with the Rogers family, and words for people who know that who remember her career down here in Southeast and Central Seattle, and she was on those great Chief South teams, ultimately being a star at the University of Washington basketball program. Our thoughts and prayers are out to the entire Rogers family. We're thinking about them, and they are obviously a South End family and have spent a lot of time down here. So we think about you, and we are praying for Regina Rogers, her family, and her life cut short too soon. And that's the impact that high school athletes have on communities here in the Pacific Northwest. Mick, I was at a state football playoff game on Friday night, and it's interesting because people who there are friends of mine who do watch us. By the way, they go back and they watch the highlights, and they're like, "Oh, sometimes Juan, you and Mick never talk about anything." And I said, if you go through the catalog, I think I would see different. We talk about a lot of different things. You go look at the shows and everything. And they were saying that, he's not going to talk about playoff formats and recruiting and blah, blah, blah. I said, Mick has been very, very open and very, very upfront and has explained it. And I said, in fact, on Tuesday, I will sit down and I will chat with him about this again. And you and I have both talked about the responsibilities that the districts have and the different things that go in, and Andy Barnes and the different folks and how they are trying to make sure that football is balanced, and we give opportunities for people to participate, and making sure that the work of the districts and the WIAA are all also into that. However, it was Friday night. The school that my son goes to, at the end of the first quarter, they beat a pretty good team out of the Kinko Conference, and they might be going a little bit of a down period right now, but nevertheless, the score was 35-0 at the end of the first quarter. And it didn't get much better from there, and there was a lot of people kind of limping off, and times where players were getting hurt, and which can happen in any football game just because of the nature of the sport. But there were some lopsided results this weekend. There were some teams that won really, really big, and last couple of weeks I've seen the scores, and some teams are winning really, really big as they're going to the playoffs, and to really big scores to really small scores. And the conversation was talked about, and I hope you can go through it with us, especially for this round of 32, which by no means is perfect, but I don't know what system would be perfect. But can we discuss how the WIAA and the districts, I want to make that clear, determine the playoff format and seedings for the state football tournament?
Yeah, no, and actually, I'm glad we're talking about these things, because a lot of people, don't have all the information. So, we're always happy to share the information, take ideas. So, first of all, the state football playoffs haven't started yet. Okay. So, this coming week is the first week of our state football playoffs. Last week is called Week 10, and that's run by our WI districts. And that's not, to sidestep it. So, essentially, at the 3A, 4A level years ago, athletic directors got together and they said, hey, we want to expand the football playoffs to 32 teams rather than 16. So they organize all that. Andy Barnes is our football commissioner. He'll get them information if they want it, but they do all that. They do the bracket, the scheduling, everything. And then after those games are played on Friday, then we take the 16 qualifiers out of each of the 6 WI districts, and we pull our own seeding committee together and we place them on our bracket. And that's what you can find on WI.com right now. So the concerns you're saying is we deal with this all the time with schools. Everybody wants to say they go to state, but they don't want to get running clocked in the first half, right? They don't want to spend in my very first year in this job, we were at the National AD Conference that winter. And Russ Waterman, who's become a great ally, very outspoken, very, very good AD out of Eastmont School District up there by Wenatchee. And he sat down next to me one day at the conference and he said, "Man, Mick, we spent $10,000 to go get running clocked down at Camas." And I said, "Okay, let's talk about that. What are our options? Should we play all those games on a neutral field? Because number one, to get a neutral field, on the halfway point, we'd have to require schools to host. Right. And we don't have the authority. We have a hard time getting schools to host even when they're in the game because they have a hard time getting workers. So number one is that's why we let the higher seed. I mean, there has to be some reward for being a higher seed. So we let them host. Then the other option is, do we shrink the tournament down? This was the round of 16 that he was concerned about. So it was like, do we just say 8 teams make it and cut down the number of teams? Well, no one wants to do that unless they're in that top 8. And so he goes, "Oh, good question. Good point." He's on our board now, right? Trying to solve this. And so, it was a really good conversation because as an athletic director, I don't want to spend $10,000 either to go running clock when I could use that money for a lot of other programming. But at the same time, if we're going to have 16 teams, you don't want 1 and 2 playing the first week because it's more convenient regionally. Right. And so that's been the battle in our state. The other battle in our state is, do you have the best teams go, and how do you determine that? Or do you have geographical representation? So when you're not very good, we got schools advocating for geographical representation. A perfect example, when I was in Southwest Washington, our wrestling coaches hounded me when I was on the board to get lined up with District 2 Metro Wrestling. Let us go wrestle District 2. They thought they could steal allocations. I said, no problem. We'll go wrestle the Metro Conference. And then in basketball, we're going to go play the Metro Conference. And we're going to put all our allocations on the line as well. All of a sudden it's like, hey, wait a minute, right? And so, that's the challenge. So anyway, last week was not. That's an expansion of the tournament, which the more teams you have, the more disparity between quality from 1 to 32 as opposed to 1 to 16. We'll still have some blowouts this week, but
I guess the thing for me is, I know that we have been talking over the last decade, probably more like 15 years, about the safety of the game and the integrity of the game, making sure that kids are out there and that the moms in particular don't have to see their kids limping off the field, laying flat out after getting trucked by a guy who outweighs them by about 100 pounds. And I don't know if embarrassment is the term, because it's sports, and anytime you go out in the field, there's an opportunity that you may get beat. But when players and coaches are talking about the game is unwinnable, and they're going up to Seattle and they are completely beat in the first quarter, is there a way that we can minimize that for the protection of the game and also for the protection of the kids who are playing the game? Yeah, or is it just a part of the game?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I will tell you, I know the entire country struggles with this. So this is a common topic at our summer meeting where we bring our board and staff to meet with other states. So our states tried to address it some with how we classify now. So we make an adjustment for socioeconomics. And it's not that impoverished nation or impoverished schools can't compete. It's that there's so much more transition in those types of schools. Those are the schools I worked in. Those are the schools I love, the Hudson's Bay, Fort Vancouver's. And we would have students moving in and out of the school throughout the year. And the kids I started as freshmen in my program, a lot of times would not be attending that school for a variety of reasons, usually because of need to move. So that's what we've tried to do. There's some states that are way more aggressive with that, like California. Some of their sections, they don't know what level they're playing at, what classification, till right before playoffs. And so they play their regular season, and then they get placed into classifications towards the end of the season. And, that could mean that your basketball team, your girls basketball team might be 4A and your boys team might be 1A. And so that's some of the extremes that we see around the country that we're watching. So there's ways of doing it. It's just, what are we willing to give up? Are we willing to give up our regular rivalries? The Metro Conference is a great example of what's going on. So they're doing tiered brackets where they're taking 8, the teams they believe are the top 8 in the sport, and putting them in a top bracket and the other 8 in the bottom, and playing each other more often. Now, it does a couple things. One, what we're seeing is during the regular season, they're getting more competitive games. There's not as many blowouts. The trouble with that is then how do you allocate into postseason? And we had a situation with one of the schools in Seattle where they had a letter writing campaign that came in where they took second in that second tier, and the way the league set it up, they didn't give them access to the postseason, and people were upset. So I don't know if that's more of a communication one or something else. So there are some places doing that. Welcome back, Daniel, or welcome back, Juan. So we were talking about, we're trying to address the parity or competitive equity through how we classify now, and not saying that, high poverty schools can't compete. We do see where they do compete. It's just that in general, it's a little more challenging with the transitional nature of a lot of the students and families in there, and the access that they have as youngsters to training and other participation to develop those skills prior to getting into high school. So we just know that there is some impact to that, not that it's impossible. And we're talking about California. I don't know if you even know this. I don't know how much you can hear, but California, in some of their sections, they're classifying their schools at the end of the regular season. So all of a sudden you get to the end of the regular season, they're picking out which teams are going to 4A, which ones are going to 1A, which ones are going to 2A, based on how they ranked them during the year.
And let me take a step back, because you bring up a couple of important points, and this is going to be a conversation I'm sure that will go into the second half of the show as we're coming up on the break time. But if you can give a Reader's Digest, Mick, what are some of the factors that contribute to one school being so more dominant than the other school?
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with consistency in coaching. If you have the same coaches there from year in, year out, you're going to get students that want to play there. And students, move around, right? Whether, and a lot of it is coming in as 8th graders, 9th graders. A lot of people do this within the rules. But if they know they have coaches there that they want to play for, that know what they're doing and are going to be there long term, we see a lot of students that will gravitate there. And once a program starts performing on a regular basis, students choose to go to those schools. And so I would say that's probably the greatest impact that we see of consistency in winning.
We are up on the time of the break, and I'm so sorry for my little disappearance there. Some people said I never sounded better on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio World. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation about the playoff formats in the football playoffs in the state of Washington.
Rainier Avenue Radio.
Support for Rainier Avenue Radio comes from Cascade PBS, presenting season 2 of Out and Back with Allison Mariella Desir. Join Allison as she explores the Pacific Northwest with changemakers who are reclaiming space in the outdoors and creating opportunities for local BIPOC communities to engage with nature and find joy and healing. It's available now on Cascade PBS app and airing on KCTS 9 Thursdays at 8:50 p.m.
Greetings. This is your host, DJ Neftali, Rainier Avenue Radio World, the best DJ in the Seattle area. You can catch me every Monday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Like I said, this is DJ Neftali, the best reggae in Seattle, Washington, the best radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Mom, right?
Hey, this is serious. Let's talk about saving lives. Fentanyl overdoses are rising, and it can happen to anyone. But here's the good news. Naloxone, also known as Narcan, can reverse an opioid overdose. Yeah, it's that powerful. Naloxone is easy to use, and it could save a life in minutes. It comes as a nasal spray, and you don't need to be a doctor to use it. If someone you know overdoses, spray it in their nose, call 911, and stay with them. You could be the reason they wake up.
Hey, Seattle, tune in to Lidline Sports every Monday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m.
What up, yo? We are back. This is Pep, and the man that don't take no mess, Mr. O-P-I-S, Mr. Stevenson. What say you?
I hope you see the hat that I'm wearing right now. That's how mad I am.
I do. Man, you are angry.
I just want to make that be known.
Tune in to Lidline Sports every Monday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Lidline Sports.
A new law is helping people save more money on prescription drug costs. You may also be able to save with Medicare's Extra Help program. Your premium cost can be zero and your out-of-pocket expenses are low. Who should apply? Single individuals earning less than $23,000 a year or married couples earning less than $31,000 a year. Even if you don't think you qualify, you should still check out this program. Visit ssa.gov/extrahelp. Medicare costs are covered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio,
your community radio station.
Was that Daniel Bellis I heard? Harmonizing on that Rainier Avenue Radio bumper? I can't see if he is or not, but that was impressive, Daniel, if that indeed was you. Juan Cotto touching bases with you live on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, with our weekly guest, Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, based in Renton, overseeing the entire state of Washington and making sure that our children have opportunities to have great memories, grow and develop as people through athletics. And we appreciate all the work that the WIAA does. And Mick, we certainly appreciate your time. Daniel, are there any reads this week? You want to pop them up there, or anything you need me to read? Or if I don't see it in 3 seconds, I'm just going to run with the and put Mick back on the conversation. Okay, so there we go. You mentioned the state of California, and we know that they have the states of California and Texas obviously have such a massive playoff format, simply because the states are so large and spread out, and you can have teams in Northern California, Southern California, and all the different divisions that we've heard about for years, the De La Salles, the Mater Deis, and schools like that. In Texas, you have almost, from what I understand, there's almost 1,400 schools playing football in the state of Texas. If I'm not mistaken, I could be, but I think I'm close. I'm sorry, in the state of Texas, I'm close on that number. And there are schools, there are states that have explored alternative formats, and Mick, with all of the technology now, we have Cal Preps and we have these different rating services. They come up with extremely accurate ways that we can look at the competitiveness of the teams. Has the WIAA ever explored alternative formats to make some of the early round games and even the entire tournaments more competitive?
Yeah, the challenge that we have with early round games is if the seeding committees do a good job, you have the best teams playing the lesser talented teams. And so that's really where we get the discrepancy. So, some of them, like California, they have an open division. And I heard their ADs present this one time. They have 10 sections, so essentially 10 states, 1,600 schools. Yeah. And in their open division, they pull the best teams, and they said, basically, we let all the cheaters play in this division. Right, this sarcastic AD is how he explained it. But really, the really good teams, and again, high quality programs are going to draw high quality kids and more of them than one-offs like we see our other programs. So they pull out that top, and they actually, my understanding is they did 16 to start. And then the number 16 team's going up against number 1 getting crushed. And they're like, hey, this is no good. We have a chance to win our section championship. And we come up here and we get beat. Oregon, which runs a lot of 32-team tournaments, they went to a 16-team state championship in football a couple years ago. And then they took 17 through 32, and they played for what they called the Cascade Cup, right? And so the 32 still make the state playoffs, but 17-32, kind of like what the Metro's doing with that second tier, that you're playing for a trophy, but it's not the same as the top 8. Well, guess what happened over there? Number 14, 15, 16 are unhappy because now they're playing 1, 2, and 3, getting beat, in most cases bad. And they're like, hey, we would have been playing 17, 18, 19, a game we had a chance to win. And then we would have got to play the next week and might have got 2 or 3 rounds in the state playoffs. Now we're one and done because we're playing number 1. So it doesn't, it's like classifications. You have to draw a line somewhere. And whoever's just above it's unhappy. Whoever's just below it is happy. And you move the line, you got different people, happy and unhappy. So that's the challenge with this. CFP just went to 12 teams after all these years because they were worried about blowouts in their playoffs. So we'll see how it goes this year.
Yeah, and it was, a couple of things come to mind this season. The opening game of the season, O'Day played a phenomenal football game against Graham-Kapowson at Memorial Stadium. And in the O'Day's David Schwartzel made a tackle of a quarterback with about 40 seconds to go in the game. The ball came out. He picked it up, ran into the end zone, and O'Day won. But that was the kind of game you would expect between two close teams. And the game was tied up to that point. It was a phenomenal football game, and you got to see exactly what you would expect to see out of two teams that are normally qualifying for the state championship. Again, with the situation down in Oregon, and that's an interesting one because when you have the sections and 16 is playing against 1, and unfortunately, they get eliminated early. But you expect them to be playing teams against their top, of their caliber, and I'm just wondering if, and I'm sure a lot of people, and we've been flashed the question: how are these states determining the rankings of their football programs throughout the state?
The other states?
No, and how do we do it, or how do we do it as well? What are they using technical analysis? Are they using the Cal Preps format? When I see RPI in high school football, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, the challenge with RPI is you have to get your opponent's scores. And so, like in our case, it's really hard to track out-of-state schools. So say, Nathan Hale basketball goes to a Christmas tournament, they go play 4 teams around the country. Well, to have a really quality RPI, trying to rank, power rankings, essentially, you have to have all your opponent's scores and records. And so to source that nationally, there's no tool for that. Max Preps has tried. They're almost out of business. I mean, there's a lot of companies that have Scorebook Live is trying, and they're struggling with it. And so we use an RPI. It's a formula of your wins, your opponent's wins. And then, but out of state games, we had to take out the formula because it was actually skewing this. The other piece that happens with trying to rank like that is I'm going to use the Metro. And we don't want people to quit doing this creative scheduling because the regular season, all kids are experiencing that, right? And we think our seeding committees, so we take every league in each sport at each classification gets a representative. And they meet throughout the season to rank the teams in that sport. So say we just did volleyball. So 3A volleyball, each of the leagues around the state have a representative. They're meeting on a regular basis, right? And ranking teams based on what they know. Who's hurt? Because you have to start factoring those kind of things in. If all of a sudden your setter, it goes out, blows her knee out at the end of the season, even though they're undefeated, that's a different team going in the postseason. So they're trying to factor that in along with RPI and everything else. And so they seed the tournament 1 through 16 or 1 through 12 or 1 through 20, depending on how big the tournament is. And then from there, we put them on the bracket and run with it. So other states, some states go strictly RPI. And again, they get in the same complaints because the RPI in Washington, we're trying to figure out a new formula with the Metro having 2 divisions and not playing everybody. So your bottom tier team, like in football, we had a 7-1 football team not make the postseason, right? Mm-hmm. And you have teams up here that are 5-4, but look at who they've played, right? And then when they cross over, it's a running clock situation a lot of times. And so an RPI, if it's based on wins and losses and your opponents, and you're playing all really good teams and somebody else isn't, the data point is skewed. That's where the human element comes in. Kinko went into pods, and Cindy Adset went to a meeting and a longtime athletic department member from University of Washington approached her and said, "Hey, I want to thank you for what you're doing with the Kinko scheduling." And she said, "Well, we don't do the scheduling for regular season." But what are you talking about? He was a football player at Issaquah and said that for the first time, they were having competitive games all year. Well, the Kinko put their schools into pods based on how they thought they were competitive because they know their teams better than anyone else. And so they're playing each other, and those tougher pods get more allocations out. What are deemed, lower strengths of schedule teams, they're getting less teams out. And when it gets to that point, people get mad because they don't understand it, right? We're 7-1. How can we not be going on the playoffs? Well, it's they did you a favor during the league to give you competitive games. They had a great season. Again, go to 32, and now you probably got a running start clock game in the first half against O'Day.
It's interesting when you speak with people who have either vast public personas, the mayors and city council members and governors and people that I've known publicly, and then also, I guess it's a limited public platform, but it's one that people are familiar with throughout the state of Washington. And for you to come and do this radio show, and for me and Daniel and I to get to know you over the last several years, we say, man, Mick is a really good dude. And when we talk to people in the public, and we're just saying, what kind of guy is Mick Hoffman? I said, man, he's salt of the earth kind of guy. Now, that guy really cares about kids. He cares about athletics. He in a position which is really difficult. I want to ask you this question, and I set that up because I want to. I don't know if you received letters from the Ingram parents. I had certainly had Ingram parents and people who are close to that program reach out to me. And I was wondering if you received the letters from them, Mick, and what went through your mind when you heard, here we are, we're a 7-1 football team, Juan, and you guys will understand, we played everybody on our schedule and we lost a close game to South, and we're not going to be in the playoffs, and we're better than Blanchette. What as the WIAA executive director, what goes through your mind?
I wish the people making those decisions would do a better job educating. I mean, this is one where we talked, that's a league decision. That has nothing to do with the WIAA. And not to throw shade on anybody or, dodge a tough question, but leagues decide those things. And, I would say my thought on it was good for the Metro League in creating a situation where a football program had some success during the year that doesn't necessarily translate to postseason success for some of the reasons we've already discussed. Now, it's too bad that as part of that process that the Ingram community wasn't better informed by leadership, whoever is responsible for getting that information out about how their league was set up. Because the concept of not having Ingram students potentially face lopsided contests all year by playing those top tier. I mean, the Metro League top 4 teams are tough. And not having to play them gives you a chance to go 7-1. And there's been some small schools down Southwest Washington done this for years as well. So when those emails start coming in to us, it's a breakdown in communication from the people responsible. All we can, we can't respond to each one of those. We go to the people who are responsible for those decisions and say, all right, are you guys going to put something out to help these parents understand? Parents love their kids, right? They're going to advocate for the kids. We get it. We can't fix that issue. That we didn't create the issue. We can't fix it. So we rely on the people responsible to do that. And we're not saying it's a bad decision. It was just a communication gap.
Mick, it's one of those situations where it doesn't go away, and some years it flares itself up, and other times and I'm just wondering. I remember talking to Mike Colbreeze many years ago when I was at the Highline, and my idea was, we could have a you could have a just break it down 32. You could almost have like 10 division champions. And I had a conversation with a good friend, Dan Teeter, and he said, Juan, they would never allow it at the district level. And you talked about the leagues, but there's also the district component as well. And a lot of these decisions don't even make it all the way up to the WIAA. Can you please just share, if there was an opportunity for change, how that would work and what role the districts would play in that as well?
Yeah, so when we say districts, we're talking WIAA districts, right? So the state's broken into the 6 geographical areas that we call districts. So the way it works is the WIAA gives state playoff berths, right? We call them allocations. So in football, 16 of them for most divisions. Those 16 go out to those 6 divisions or those 6 districts. They decide how they fill it. That's up to them. So they could draw straws. We don't care. Right? Everybody gets one. And then what we do is when we get the names of those 16 schools from those 6 districts, and it's based on number of schools is how we divide out the 16, right? So same thing for basketball, same thing for volleyball. So depending on how there's a math formula that gets you your allocations or playoff berths, you figure out how to do that through your leagues and your WIAA district tournament. So let's use District 2, Sea King as an example. At the 3A, 4A level, you have the Metro and the Kinko. They decide between the two of them, if they have, say, 6 berths into football, how are they going to pull those 6 berths out of their leagues? They get to decide it. We don't care. You give us those. We get those names on that Friday night, like this last Friday night. Our seating committee meets. I can hear Macy singing. She's a happy kid. You get the seating committee together Saturday morning. They take those 16 names, look at their list, what they've been talking about all year, and they rank them from 1 to 16, and those are our matchups. So, yeah, the leagues can decide how to do it. And I will say this, the Metro League has done a really good job of trying to create competitive opportunities for kids during the regular season. And the last 2 years, we had a football coach resign. It was all over the Seattle Times because he got put in that top tier. Well, in the top tier, if you get more playoff berths, and that's what it's about, why would you complain about being put in there as the 8th team and not be in the 9th team or the first one in that second tier, right? Well, they want to be in that second tier because they're looking at the teams they're playing. They know on every Friday night they have a chance to win. Then at the end of the season, 7-1, we expect to go to the playoffs. And that's the communication gap, is by not having to play O'Day and Eastside Catholic and those on those other Friday nights, there's a cost to that, and the cost is the playoff access. The district decides that. Our office doesn't decide that. And so I applaud them for giving all kids a chance to compete on every Friday night. Now we just need to make sure the public and the parents understand. So when we get to week 10, they understand why they're included or not included. So,
when I was at Highline, technically we were a 3A school. I believe Highline has dropped down into the 2A classification, but it was a 3A school. There's a brand new building now, of course, and that attracts a different clientele. But nevertheless, right down the street from us was a 3A Catholic high school in Kennedy Catholic. Right up 4 miles, not even 4 miles, I want to say about 2 miles away was Foster High School, which I believe was a 1A or 2A school at the time. About a half mile away, if I'm not mistaken, is Tyee. You had Rainier right down the street. And then, our athletic director, who had a great sense of humor, had me go play against Yelm. And Yelm is a 3A school, but it is significantly different than the students that are there. And I'm just wondering, in our last question in regards to this, is there ever going to be a chance where we get away from that the classifications based on the size of school, especially for football, because some 3A schools, some 2A schools, I mean, Anacortes would come in right now and just they would have destroyed the program that I had. Is there a way that we can measure the schools differently, or is it always going to be based on the size of the school?
Yeah, I mean, that's really a question how our membership wants to, and that goes back to that California example. Some of the states are doing it on how that school and that sport performed the last 2 years. Our membership has said, well, but if that was based on heavy seniors, why would we have this year's group based on kids who have graduated? California went beyond that. That's how California once did it. Now they're saying, hey, let's just see how good you are this year, and then we'll place you in there. Makes for great tournaments, great games. I mean, if there's a way of identifying, but I'll tell you this, as soon as we take that team that could be the 3A number 1 seed and they become the 4A 16 seed, they're the ones who are going to send a bunch of emails. So we're always going to have some of that. But I think if student experiences, we can't base it on noise. I mean, honestly, when I get a form letter, even if I get 100 of them in a day, I just delete them, right? After I read the first couple and I can see it's the same,
right.
I'm just deleting them. I mean, it's, I understand they're upset, but it's the same. They're not even writing original thoughts in it. So, okay, I get it. I understand. And so I guess that's the issue. Now, the other thing there I would say, Juan, talking about Anacortes, was it 4 years ago? They didn't have a program. They played JV only. Like, how is that? They didn't go down to do that. Like, they rejuvenated their program through their community youth program and bringing in some coaches who stayed a long time. So, there is hope for any school, but year in, year out, yeah, we ideally we wouldn't have to have a running clock rule because all our games would be competitive and kids would have a chance to win every single night.
You are watching WIAA Primetime on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Juan Cotto. I am a Rainier Avenue Radio sports personality and host, and we are with the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association and his granddaughter,